Hello everyone, this is Steve. Thanks for joining me. We're going to graph a polynomial in this video, so let's get to it. Here we have the polynomial f of x in a nice factored form. So the first thing we'll do is we'll identify the leading coefficient of our polynomial. And the leading coefficient is -3. We can see it out here in front. The next thing we'll do is identify the degree of our polynomial. So what we're going to do is count up the powers that we see, but we have a 2 here, 2 here, 3 here, and even though we can't see it, there's a 1 right there. So if we add those all up, we can see that we have a degree of 8. 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1. All right, the next thing we want to do is we want to identify our zeros. So I like to do these from smallest to largest. So the first 0 that I identify comes from this factor, and it's going to be -5. The next 0 I identify is from this factor, and it's going to be -2. Then I see this right here, so my next 0 is going to be 1, and my next 0 is going to be 4. Okay, once we identify our zeros, we can turn those into x-intercepts because they're all real numbers. So our x-intercepts are going to be -5, 0, -2, 0, 1, 0, and 4, 0. The multiplicity is found by looking at the power on the factor itself. So if we look at those powers again, we can see the power on the x+5 factor is 3. We can see the power on the x+2 factor is 2. The power on the x-1 factor is 1. And the power on the x-4 factor is 2. A little safety check here. If we add up our multiplicities, we should get the same thing we got for our degree, which is 8. So it does work. The next thing we'll write down is what our behavior is based on these multiplicities. So how is the graph going to behave at each x-intercept? So when we have a multiplicity that is odd but bigger than 1, we're going to do a cross and flatten. When our multiplicity is even, we're going to do a bounce. So we'll have a bounce there or a bounce there. That's sometimes called touching and turning around. And if our multiplicity is just 1, then we're just going to cross over the x-axis. Okay, finally, using our leading coefficient, which is negative, and our degree, which is even, we can jot down what our end behavior will look like. Because there's 4 types of end behavior a polynomial can have, based on the leading coefficient being positive or negative, and the degree being even or odd. Okay, with all this information, we are ready to sketch a graph, so let's go ahead and do that. Before I actually sketch my graph, the first thing I like to do is put in a couple little arrows to indicate my end behavior, so I know I'm going to be going down on both sides because of my end behavior. And then I like to put in my x-intercepts, which are going to be at -5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to have one right here. Another one's going to be at -2, right there. Another one's going to be at 1. And another one's going to be at 4, right here. Then to make it so I don't have to keep referring back to my work up there, at this time I will write down what my behavior is going to be at each x-intercept. So the -5, I'm going to do a little cross and flatten. At the -2, I'm going to do a bounce. At the 1, I'm going to do a cross. And at the 4, I'm going to do a bounce. All right, so now it's time to draw the picture. We'll start on the far left, and as we encounter our x-intercepts, we'll put in the proper behavior. When you're drawing your graph, you can't just come up at an x-intercept like this and then look at what you're supposed to do, because a cross and flatten and a bounce require doing a little bit of fancy drawing before you actually get to the x-intercept. So let's get rid of that mistake right there. And since I'm supposed to cross and flatten, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up early like this, like I'm going to do a bounce, but then I just take off and do a cross and flatten like that. Then, keeping my curve nice and smooth, I come down here early so I can do a nice smooth bounce. Keeping my curve nice and smooth, I come down here and do a cross. Nice and smooth up here for a bounce. And then down. And there's my graph. Thanks for watching. I hope that helped.